Hello friends, welcome back. Today we would be learning a very important topic, that is how to split an Excel workbook into multiple workbooks, or in other words, how to save sheets within an Excel workbook as separate workbooks. This is very important. In our daily lives you would be coming across situations where you would be having a huge spreadsheet with a number of tabs. As you can see in this sample Excel workbook, I have a number of tabs like data 1, data 2, data 3, data 4. Now my intention is like each of these tabs should be saved as a separate workbook altogether. So we'll write a macro that would achieve this task. So let me first give you a demonstration. Like when I'll click on this split workbook, what will happen is like each of these tabs, data 1 to data 4, would get stored as separate workbooks at this location. You could see here data 1, data 2, data 3, data 4, these workbooks are not available, but post execution of this macro, those would get stored over there. So once I click this, let's see what happens. In the background the macro is executing and now it has completed. I just click on OK. Now once again if I see the location, and here you could see data 1, data 2, data 3, data 4, these 4 files are available over here. We'll see the data within those files, like whether the actual data has been copied correctly. If you would see in data 4 I have written some sample data entries like data 4 in all the cells, similarly in data 3, data 2 and data 1. And now if you would see these workbooks over here, I'm just opening it. You could see it on the top. This is the data 1 Excel workbook, and here it has all data 1s, which means this sheet data 1 has been stored separately as a new workbook, and rest data 2 to data 4 similarly we have other workbooks. So you found the demo interesting. Now let's go ahead and actually write the code to achieve this. So let's begin. First of all, I'll just close this workbook, the data 2. Also I'll close the data 1 workbook. Now I'm at the main workbook from where we executed this macro. Just before writing the code, one important thing is that this developer tab should be visible in your workbook. If it is not visible, if you are using Microsoft Office 2007 as I am using, you could go to this office icon on the top, click over there, go to Excel options. Within the popular tab you will have this option, show developer tab in the ribbon. Make sure that it is selected, because if it is not selected, then this developer tab would not be available. So make sure you enable that option. If you are using later versions of Microsoft Office, don't worry, instead of this icon you'll have the file menu. You'll find the same option within the file menu. So the developer tab is visible. Now we'll go ahead and start writing our macro. Now our intention is like these tabs, data 1 to data 4, should be saved as separate Excel workbooks. Now what if I have to perform this operation manually without writing the macro? What I will do is, I will go over here, for example data 1, do a right click, select the option move or copy. I'll select this option, create a copy. Since I need a new workbook, I'll select the option new book and finally click on OK. When I do that, this kind of a workbook gets open. Now if you see, this is an entirely new workbook which got created, and it has the data of the data 1 tab. Finally I could save this workbook. So I do a save as, and in any location in your system, I'm using this Excel automation test Excel and giving any name. I'm using the name as data 1 and I'm clicking on this save button. So this workbook gets saved. Now these steps we had performed manually. I showed you the manual steps because if we do not know these manual steps, we won't be able to create the macro to automate this process. So now we are aware of the manual steps. Now comes the most interesting part, is to automate this entire process, for which we would use this very good feature called record macro. Now you'll find this record macro within this developer tab. So whatever operations we performed manually, we would be recording it. So to record those steps, what you have to do is just click on this record macro. Some box would appear, just click on OK. Now perform the same steps. What I do is I go to data 1, perform a right click, do a move or copy, select this option, create a copy. I need to move this into a new book, so I select this option, new book. Now I click on OK. So as you see, a new book has been formed. Now one thing is remaining is we have to save this Excel workbook. So what I'll do is I'll do a save as. I'm keeping the same name, clicking on save. That's okay, I will replace it. I clicked on yes, and now this workbook has been saved. Finally what I'll do is I'll close this workbook. Now all the steps have been recorded. So what I'll do is now I'll click on stop recording. Once I do that, now you all must be wondering where these recorded steps have gone. To view the recorded steps, you have to open the macro window. For that, you have to use the keyboard Alt and function key F11. When you do that, this kind of a window would open up. If you see over here, you will find something called modules. Just click on the plus button over here. You will have something called module 1. If you double click over here, you will find the code of the recorded steps. When these steps would get executed, a new workbook would get created at this location, which I am highlighting right now, because this was the location which we selected to save the workbook. If you wish to change the location, you can do so. You just have to provide the path wherever you wish to store it in your system. Make sure that the syntax is correct and there would be no problems. Now comes the interesting part. If I will execute this macro, you know what will happen? It would actually create a new workbook at this location. So this was the location, and this was the data1 file which got created when we performed the steps manually. So what I'll do is I'll just delete this file over here. And now if I perform this operation, let's see what happens. So to execute this macro, I am clicking this green button on the top, or you could also press the function key F5. I did that, the code got executed within few seconds, and now if you visit that location, you could see this data1 file has been created, and if you could see the timestamp, it is 11:49 AM and here it is 11:50 AM. So just few seconds ago this got created. So the code which would be performing the task of saving the tab as an Excel workbook is this. Just these lines of code is performing that operation. So these lines of code successfully create the workbook with the data of the data1 tab in the main workbook. But our intention is like all the tabs. If you would see the main workbook, we have data1, data2, data3 and data4. So all these 4 tabs should get created as separate workbooks. This code which we are seeing right now creates only one workbook of the data1. So what we have to do to get all the other tabs, I'll show you. For that we'll have to write some code. The code is very simple. So the first step of the code would be, I should know the total number of sheets within my workbook. The code to get the total number of sheets goes like this. It is very simple. I'll use this workbook dot sheets dot count. This I will assign in a variable. So I'll use the variable, any variable of your choice you could use. I'm using total sheets is equal to. So the total number of sheets would get stored in this variable. In our case, the total number of worksheets which we have in our workbook is 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. So when the code will get executed, total sheets will store the number 5. Now what we'll do is we'll use a for loop to iterate through all the sheets. The for loop syntax goes like this. For any variable name, I'm using the iterator I is equal to 1, 2, total sheets. And this operation would be common. So I place the next at this line which I'm highlighting right now. So these lines will get executed 5 times because total sheets holds the number 5. Now comes another very important part. If I'll execute this code as it is, every time it would be picking up the data 1 sheet. I do not want that. I want it to pick up data 1, data 2, data 3 and data 4. For that we'll have to make some more changes. The changes go like this. We should know the names of the sheets. To get the name of the sheet, what we'll do is this workbook dot sheets within round brackets I would put the index. Now my index in this case is I. Remember, in the for loop we are using the variable I dot name, and I'll store it in a variable. So I use the variable str sht name, any variable of your choice you could use. So this variable would now store the name of the worksheet. So now here if you would see the recorded step, here the sheet name is hard coded. So here I'll replace this data 1 with this variable. Similarly on the next line, here also data 1 is hard coded. I'll use this variable name. And on the next line, here when we are saving the file, I am using the name as data1.xlsx. Now remember, we have the different worksheets, so with each worksheet getting saved, I want the worksheet to be saved with the name of the sheet. So again here you will have to use the variable. Now this is a bit different, so you will have to take care of the syntax. So this is the opening inverted comma over here which I am highlighting. So what I'll do is, up till this point before the name of the sheet, I am closing the inverted comma. Now I am deleting this data 1 because I do not want this hard-coded data 1. Now I need to append something, so I'm using the ampersand. Now I'll use the variable name over here which is str sheet name. Finally another ampersand, and here I have to put another double inverted quote because here a double inverted quote is getting end. So this is the beginning of that double inverted quote. So this is done. So here also we have changed the hard coded data 1 to the variable name str sht name. So with this we have written the code which would be transferring these data sheets, these tabs, all these tabs which you are seeing over here would get stored as separate workbooks at the location which we have mentioned in our code. The location is this one which I am highlighting right now. I'll show you this location. So this is the location on the file system. You can see over here there are no files present over here. But when I will execute this macro, you will see the files getting saved over there. So let's go ahead and execute this macro. For executing, you could use the function key F5 or just press the green button on the top. So I have started the execution. In the background it is getting executed. The execution has completed. Now let's visit the location, and here if you would see all the tabs which were there in the original Excel file, all the tabs right from the start to all the data tabs, all have been stored as separate workbooks at this location. Now you all must be wondering why this start tab has come, because if you remember, we were using this start tab for the button. So actually I do not want this start tab to be saved as a separate workbook. My intention was only the data sheets should be stored. So if you want to avoid this start tab to be stored as a separate workbook, what you can do is you go back to the code and you'll have to place one if statement like this. If str sheet name is not equal to start, then the below lines of code would get executed. Here I'll place the end if. So what this will do is, like, apart from the start data sheet, all the rest of the data sheets would get stored as separate Excel workbooks. We will go back to the developer tab, and here what you will do is, once this thing gets executed, we'll just place a message box so that we'll come to know that the execution has completed. I'm just passing the message as done. And y'all must be wondering how to link this code which we have written over here with the button. So what I'll do is, I'll just remove this button first. And if you want to add a button on this worksheet, what you have to do is, in the developer tab, go to insert. Here take this option, button within the form controls. When you select that, just left click with the mouse anywhere on the sheet. So this kind of a button will appear. You could just click OK. You could just resize it like this, and within the button you could mention any text. For example, I am writing over here split workbook. Okay, so on this click of the button, I want these data sheets to be stored as different workbooks. So I need to link this button with the macro code. So the name of this sub is macro 2. So we link this macro 2 with the button. So this macro 2 is up to you. You could rename it. I am also renaming it as split workbook. Now we'll go to the button, do a right click. You have something called assign macro. When you click there, you'll get this option. You could see below you have this option, macro name split workbook. Select that and click on OK. When you do that, this button is linked with the code over here, and on the click of that button, this code would get executed. The output would be these data sheets, data 1 to data 4, would get stored at the location which is mentioned. In this case, the start tab would not be stored because we have avoided it in this condition over here. So if we go back to this location, earlier we had these data 1 to data 4 sheets and the start sheet. What I'll do is I'll delete all these sheets, because if I'll execute the code without deleting the sheet, it will throw an error that the file already exists. So to avoid that, I'm removing all the sheets, and now I will once again execute this code, but this time I'll use this button. So let's see what happens. You could see in this, the sheets are getting created and they are getting stored in the background. Here you could see it is giving me the message done, which means the execution has completed. And now if I once again move to the location, I could see only data 1 to data 4, and this time the start sheet has not come. So we have achieved our target to split the workbook and save these data sheets as separate workbooks. So it is pretty simple, isn't it? I hope you found this tutorial helpful. If you like my videos, I request you to please subscribe to my YouTube channel so that you would be updated with the latest videos I would be uploading. Guys, thanks for joining. I'll see you in my next tutorial. Goodbye.